So I'm a recovering approval addict. And you may associate the word addict with a substance like drugs or alcohol, but there are many different forms of addiction in the world. For example, you may know somebody who's addicted to power, and you may affectionately call that person a control freak. Or somebody that's addicted to gambling or pornography or even video games. Well, for me, the addiction was approval. So why am I talking about addiction in a conference that's all about passion? And it's because passion and addiction are really close together. In fact, the difference between passion and addiction is control. And what I mean by that is if you are in control of your passion, it's probably healthy. But if your passion controls you, it's likely an addiction. So let me explore this idea of approval as an addiction. And I want to ask you a question. When is the last time that you let your desire for approval go just a little bit too far? And I want to jog your memory. Have you ever volunteered or served on a board, or taught Sunday school or served in church? Or have you had Botox or plastic surgery or bought an expensive brand of something? Or how about this? In the last 3 hours, have you checked your social media feed over a dozen times to see how many likes you had on that post? Why did you do those things? Were you trying to look like a good person, or more generous, or more beautiful, or more worthy of something? You see, seeking approval is something that a lot of people struggle with, but they don't always see it as a problem. And from my experience, if you're constantly looking for approval from somebody else to be happy with your own life, you've already crossed the threshold into addiction. Because it's that compulsive dependency on something for your happiness that makes it an addiction. So let me show you how easy it is to slip from passion down to addiction. I found my passion when I was 11 years old. I grew up in a patch town in northeastern Pennsylvania, the son of a plumbing and heating contractor, and my dad made me his helper at a young age to teach me a value of $1. And we lived in the coal capital of the country, so a good portion of his work was helping homeowners change out their coal furnaces for gas and oil burners. And I could remember at the end of every job, my dad would come down and put a sticker on the furnace. And as a little kid, this was like a ceremony for me. Now, I know he put the sticker on the furnace to remind the homeowner who to call when they needed service, but I internalized that sticker as a seal of approval for a job well done. And I could remember him telling me, son, the homeowner doesn't typically understand the mechanics of how a furnace works. They know if they have hot water, if they have heat, and if the job looks good. And then he squatted down and looked into the eyes of this 11-year-old boy. And on that final point, he said, son, for this reason, I want you to always leave things better than you found them. And he couldn't know how important and impactful those words would be on the rest of my life, but my passion was born in that moment. And to this day, I absolutely love helping people through leaving things better than I found them. It's my gift. I go back to college and look at, I set up study groups for my friends. In my first job, I helped business owners grow their revenues. And in my leadership roles, I helped managers grow their teams and their career trajectory. And over the last number of years, the company I work for moved my family and me all over the country so that I could turn around struggling and underperforming businesses. But when I look back at that, there's a portion of that time where everybody was getting better except for me. Somewhere around college, my worldview changed, And my passion became self-destructive as I started to look for approval from it. And what I mean by that is no longer was I leaving things better than I found them for the pure joy of it like I once did. I was now doing it for somebody's approval. And what a hamster wheel that was. Wanting approval, doing something to get approval. Wanting approval, doing something to get approval. And that continued on and on for a number of years until 9 years ago, when it all came to a head for me. I had finally met my match. Like Darth Vader was to Luke Skywalker and Voldemort was to Harry Potter, so my new boss was to me. No matter what I did and how well things were going, I could not get the one thing that I craved more desperately than anything else from this guy: his approval. And boy, did that weigh heavily on me. To a point where I remember driving home. It was a Friday in the spring, actually. I made it home from work after a particularly difficult and challenging week, and I found myself in my bedroom, on the floor, in a ball, at the lowest point of my life. I felt like a failure. I felt hopeless and worthless, and even a bit scared. I was so low that I could only look up, and thank God I did, because I was saved at that moment. I finally learned through some study and prayer that there's not a single person on this earth that could give me lasting approval or satisfaction. You see, approval was my surrogate for happiness, and happiness didn't come from what I got from other people. It came from what I gave. I just needed to die to my old self, literally take off and throw away that compulsive dependency I had on other people for my own happiness so that I could get back to living my passion. And I'll tell you, it hasn't been easy. There's not a week that's gone by since 9 years ago that I haven't been tempted by wanting the approval of somebody else. But there's something that I do, and it's something that I want to share with you, and not only share with you, but challenge you to do with me. So when you and I look at passion in our lives, I want us to drop the I. And dropping the I should be our cue to ask ourselves a very personal and powerful question. Am I looking for a seal of approval from the passion that I'm pursuing? And if you and I answer yes to that question, we just need to look back at the remaining two words, pass on, which should remind us to pass on the trap that we have fallen into so many times, to pass on that desire for approval or power or fame or any number of addictive distractions that pull us away from sharing our passion with people, so that you and I can go out and leave this world a better place than we found it. Thank you.